Yo, what is going on, guys? I am back with another review video. It is going to be on the Wales Smooth Criminal pad. Genuinely a very impressive pad. I actually really do like this pad, and I'm able to use it for all types of games. But as per usual, I will be talking about the surface and comparisons later in the video, mostly just talking about the overall quality of the pad at the beginning, just because it's very easy for me to talk about. First off, the stitching is genuinely very impressive. It is pretty difficult to see here, but it is perfectly level with the pad itself, and that is very impressive stitching in my opinion, just because of how large the size is, coming in at 600 by 500. I personally don't like the length of the pad size. I don't fully utilize the 600 length. I usually normally always love the 500 by 500, but decided to go with 600 for some reason. And the biggest thing is there are no nicks anywhere in the stitching. And that is ridiculously impressive to see on a pad that's only $40. There are other pads around this price bracket, but honestly, I think that the stitching here is absolutely perfect. Obviously, the only complaint would be, oh, lower the stitching below the surface. But this is perfect, in my opinion. Perfectly level, and then the stitching itself is also very soft. It's not as firm as most other pads. And the biggest reason why I actually really enjoy that is because I typically lay a lot of my form on my desk, and I always pull the pad to the edge as well. So if the stitched edging is firm at all, any vertical movements like this will typically irritate me. Not a hindrance, really, just a slight irritation that I typically overlook. But honestly, because the stitched edging is so soft, it actually doesn't bother me whatsoever. Like I said a little bit ago, it is actually a very large pad. It is 600 by 500. I personally don't really see a point in making a desk size. Like, they have another option, which is 1000 by 500, which is, the normal desk size that a lot of companies are putting out. But the 600, I just feel like completely defeats the purpose of that larger size. I don't see anyone that's able to do this in a real game, let alone do this. So I feel like that size just kind of defeats itself, unless of course you just want the comfortability of having another pad on your keyboard arm. Then it makes more sense, which is what I used to do. And this pad is incredibly soft. It's also very cool to the touch, which is really nice. Another thing is also the bass. You can see that it is a generic bass, but honestly, I don't see the point in upping the bass, even if you could, just because it's so large. It's going to lay flat. I have had no issues with it coming first out of the box and it laying flat, mainly because the packaging was so good this time around. When I first got the Walhut pad during the first batch, when I had to order it from his shop, it actually didn't come with anything. It was just a piece of plastic over the top of the pad, which I did see on Twitter. Quite a few people had like creasing and really bad bending in the pad itself because it wasn't protected properly. But I'm very grateful that he actually opted to make his own packaging. It's like a very large tube. I have a picture of it on Twitter. It is massive. And because it's so large, the pad is not tightly rolled whatsoever, which is amazing. There are a lot of pads that are very tightly rolled that usually I have to reverse roll, like the GSRC Rouge, both my Aqua Control 2 and the Zero that I also got in that same shipping that I got from Lethal. Thank you for sending this pad out, by the way. So there's just a lot of other companies that really tightly package their pads. And honestly, it's as long as it lays flat, I don't really see a problem with it. With this pad, had no issues, obviously, but with other pads, it's just kind of weird that they would tightly package it so hard. Another thing is the thickness. It comes in at 4 millimeters. Honestly, I'm actually pretty surprised. Normally, I notice if it is 4 millimeters because typically I like pads that are 3 to 3.5. But honestly, I actually thought this was 3.5, so I have no complaints here. It's also quite squishy. It's definitely like an artisan soft. It's definitely nowhere near an X soft. I have to apply quite a bit of pressure. Honestly, I feel like you could get a little bit of stopping power from pressing into the pad, but this pad does not lack that whatsoever, so I don't really see a point into doing that. And now finally talking about the surface itself, after the slight break-in period that it does have, I absolutely love this pad. The reason I actually have my Pulsar X2 is because these are the worst stock skates imaginable. I think I have only had bad experiences with these stock skates. However, even on a slow controlled pad, much like the Smooth Criminal, I have no issues with it. And the reason that is because there's very, very little initial friction. The glide is incredible. You can see how far it can glide as well. And then the other thing too is the stopping power. It's not as heavy as the Temple of Dreams, which this is the closest thing to it. The biggest difference is the Temple of Dreams is going to be a much slower pad. The other thing too is that the whale did say that the break-in period, which is technically not a real thing, he said you're just wearing down the hairs of the pad. I'll probably post a link to the tweet itself, but he did confirm that it is a slight break-in period. It took around 3-ish hours. The other thing too, when you first get this pad, it fucking reeks. I don't really know why it stinks so bad, but I like could not use it. I had to like leave it in my closet and use something else for like another 2 hours because it just stunk so bad. I think it's just the dye. I'm not too sure, but it's just a very smelly pad when it. I don't know why. It's just like the funniest thing because when I first got the pad, that's pretty much all I was saying was, "Geez, this pad stinks. I cannot use it. I'm getting a headache." It just smelled like chemicals. So just be wary that it does smell pretty bad. And there is like a 2 to 3 hour break-in period as well. But after the break-in period, this pad is amazing. And honestly, this pad I can use for pretty much whatever game, in all honesty. I pretty much started track games on very slow controlled pads. So heavy pads have never really bothered me for games like Overwatch or Fortnite or anything like that. So this pad is really amazing for those games as well. But I do see it excelling more in Valorant and CS, more precision-based hack shooters. I definitely feel like this is where it would surpass a lot of other pads in, but I'm perfectly fine with it. The main thing that I look for when I play track-heavy games like Overwatch is definitely the dynamic friction, so the overall glide, and then making small adjustments like this, very fast back and forth, because the character is always going to be strafing very fast back and forth, especially if you're trying to smoothly track them. So the biggest thing is I don't want too much stopping power because that adds to the initial friction of me gliding it again, but because the stopping power is not as heavy as the Temple of Dreams, it makes it a lot easier to do those fast, quick strafes. And then the dynamic friction is also so buttery smooth that I have no issues with tracking, especially for smoothness aim training routines. But yeah, that pretty much is all for my review. Honestly, very surprising pad. I'm actually very impressed with the overall quality and everything. I definitely feel like the quality is upped from the Wall Hut pad, mainly because the Wall Hut stitch edging, to my memory, was slightly above the surface, and now it's level with the surface, and this is a larger size. So honestly, very impressed. But yeah, I should have another video out pretty soon, hopefully before New Year's. I'm not too sure. It's going to be on the Odin Andromeda. That pad is also very surprising because it made me realize that quality means nothing to me. Surface is the most important thing for mouse pads. Unlike mice, I've realized that shape really does matter, but if the clicks suck and the build quality is unbearable, I actually cannot use that mouse. So kind of weird that it's like back and forth between those two. But anyway, don't want to ramble on too long. I hope you all have a wonderful, happy New Year's, and I hope to see you on the next video. Peace.